Donald Trump is your party's nominee.
I do not think that he will be.
Is there a candidate that you're supporting at this time?
No, actually, I'm probably one of these unusual people that have only watched one debate. The first debates, I was always doing my own campaign. I didn't see any of them. I saw the one the other night, and it was the first debate that I've been able to watch, and the first time I've been able to watch all the candidates together. And I've really just been so focused on my own campaign, I've not aligned with any of the candidates.
Would you support taking $178 million for wildfire funds out of the reserves, as the governor is proposing?
The wildfires are an issue that need to be addressed. We need to help those communities. I personally know I have a place in the Okanagan. We were evacuated this summer. But we cannot continue just to deal with the aftermath of these fires. We need to be much more prescriptive on how we're managing the public land.
So where would you get the money to be more prescriptive?
In the regular budget. We need to reprioritize this budget. Look, if the governor talked about the need to scrape the barnacles off this boat, we don't need to scrape the barnacles off the boat. We need to take a pressure hose to Olympia. For 32 years, we have not stepped back and really examined the core mission of this state and put our resources into that core mission. On the first day of my administration, we are going to launch a 4-year zero-based budgeting initiative to totally reevaluate the state budget.
It sounds like the main issue you have with the proposal that was unveiled today was the new proposal with the teacher raises.
No, the major problem I have with today's proposal is the lack of leadership and the fiscal irresponsibility. He demonstrated an incapacity to set priorities, and that's what leaders do. They identify how many resources they've got, they identify the core mission and the chief responsibilities, and they put their resources behind that core mission and those chief responsibilities. You reprioritize. You live within your means. He's not doing that. Every time he has a new need, he comes up with new taxes.
So you would have wanted to see some cuts in this particular budget?
I would have wanted to reprioritize the budget we passed only 6 months ago.
How do you
yes.
reprioritize without cuts?
You don't. You reallocate or you identify programs that are not meeting their original objective. But that assumes that you know what the original objective of the program was. And that's why we've got to have a zero-based budgeting exercise where every program has identified objectives and you evaluate whether it's meeting those objectives. And if it's not, you either fix it or you eliminate it.
Do you agree that there is a teacher shortage, or do you disagree?
No, there is a teacher shortage. There's a morale problem. I've talked to teachers all across the state. They feel that they don't have flexibility to do what they would like to do in their classrooms. They don't feel they have the resources and they're not being supported. I hear that in traditional schools. I hear the exact opposite when I visit charter schools. There, the teachers are excited. They're experimenting with innovative approaches. The kids are wild about being able to come to school and look at school in a different way than they ever have before. And the parents are excited about it as well. Those teachers, they're engaged. They're excited about coming to work. And we've got to bring that same level of excitement to the traditional schools.
Would you like to see the state providing funds to charter schools?
The state should be providing funds to charter schools as they were originally intended by the voters, yes.
What are some of your ideas on solving the education funding challenge in the state and with your research?
We are going to roll out the education plan in February, so I don't want to step on that. February, March, it will be rolled out. But I will tell you that we need to look at the funding, but we also need to take a very careful look at how we're spending money on education in the state. In the charter schools, for example, there's one charter school I visited. They're receiving the same amount of money as the traditional public schools. But for that same amount of money, they're able to take kids on field trips. One's even planning to have every 8th grader spend 4 or 5 days in a Spanish-speaking country. This is with the same amount of money as the traditional public schools are receiving. But they're able to put more of that money into the classroom. We've got to look at not just how much money we're spending, but we have to look at how we're spending that money.
And we were a little late to get over here, but did you address some of the tax exemption proposals as part of the governor's plan?
Yes, what I said was this was a governor who had promised the people of Washington State that he would not raise taxes. He even said doing so would take the state in the wrong direction. And for 4 out of 4 years, he has proposed new taxes. What he should be doing is reprioritizing the budget.
But are tax exemptions really new taxes? I mean, clearly they were taxes that once existed, and at some point a decision was made to grant exemptions in specific cases. So how do you distinguish between, how do you call that a new tax?
If you're in a border community and you're not paying a tax, and now, and as a result of his proposal, you are paying a tax, that's a tax increase.
Well, people in a different state, in the Oregon case, they're the ones that would be paying the tax, not Washingtonians, correct?
But if you're looking at some of the taxes that he's proposing, they're taxes consumers are not paying now, whether it's on bottled water or energy. If you're not paying it now, and you're going to be paying it, that's a new tax.
Do you think tax exemptions, though, should be looked at? Or do you just think the ones that exist should continue to exist?
No, I think every tax exemption, like every program, should have a defined objective. And you should determine upon reevaluation whether or not you're meeting that objective.
Just to be clear, the funding mechanism side, do you support this?
Didn't know you were standing there.
Do you support this increase in teacher base pay proposal?
I would have liked to have seen that be a part of the regular budget and part of an overall McCleary package. But we do need to deal with the teacher shortage. So I applaud him for trying to do it, but I would begin reallocate resources rather than proposing new taxes again in the supplemental budget.
Explain how you do that, though, given the legislature, in the 3 years I've covered this, has not been able to do that yet. So how are you different?
You have to provide leadership. The legislature, especially a part-time legislature, is not going to be able to do it. That's why you've got to have a governor who can pull people together, particularly during the off session, and come up with proposals that are ready to go when the legislature comes into session. It requires a lot of work, and it requires leadership. It requires coalition building. It's something I've had to do throughout my private career in international trade, and it's something that I've had to do at the Port of Seattle. It's something I'll do here in Olympia.
Are you implying the current governor has not done that?
I am implying the current governor has not done that. He's demonstrated a incapacity to pull people together. He's introduced a very hyper-partisan style to Olympia, and that's not who we are as Washingtonians.
What's an example of something you would have done different in this year's budget session?
In the past year's budget session, I would have probably in 2000, the spring of 2000, I'm getting my years mixed up. We just finished up 2015, right? So in 2014, summer of 2014, I would have gone around the state and met with all the key chairmen and the ranking minority members of those key committees and asked them what their priorities were for the legislative session. Tell me the 3 or 4 things that you really need to get out of this legislative session. And I would have gone around the state, listened to all of the legislatures, figuring out what's critical to them. Then I would have come back to Olympia and asked myself and my staff, what do we need to get out of this session in order to be where we want this state to be in 4 or 8 years? Take that information, put together a draft outline of a budget. During committee week in late November, early December, we could sit down again with the leadership and put together then a budget statement that could be rolled out in January that already had a coalition behind it in the legislature. That's the kind of leadership you've got to be demonstrating and exercising, and that we have not had in Washington State over the last 3 years.
But this budget is a coalition budget. It's written by majority of
This supplemental budget is not a coalition budget. He has not even spoken to
the budget
the...
we have right now was written primarily by Senate Republicans and signed on by House Democrats. But
You're absolutely right.
It's a split legislature. So what would you get that was different?
No, but I was asking how I would deal with it differently.
Right.
I would have pulled that coalition together early on so when we came in January, we were ready to rock and roll, and we would not have had the longest legislative session in the history of Washington State.
But would you have gotten a different result? Not a timing, but a different result.
I think when we launched this zero-based budgeting initiative on the first day of my administration, you're going to see that we're going to reestablish priorities. We're going to focus on kids. We're going to focus on keeping manufacturing jobs here in Washington State and on workforce development. We're going to focus on eliminating traffic jams and making sure that freight moves rapidly through our state. We're going to focus on saving Puget Sound. We're going to have new priorities, and we're going to ensure that whatever programs or tax incentives we're offering are attached to specific objectives so we can reevaluate whether we're moving in the right direction.
Are you encouraging your friends in the legislature, talking about lawmakers, to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot to comply with 1366, or Or do you not
I
want to
noticed that
see
the governor did not deal at all with 1366,
I noticed that the
although there was buffering at some time, so I might have missed it. But from what I could see, did he ever mention it? 1366. He was asked about it. What did he say?
Well, the governor's budget,
Yeah, Schumacher, the
Budget director.
The governor did.
asked about it.
Yeah. In what I watched, he was not asked about it at all. I think that raises some very serious questions about the sustainability of what he's proposing. Also, if you notice, he did not propose a balanced 4-year budget. He's proposed hundreds of millions of dollars in new expenditures, but no 4-year finance plan. We have been waiting for this governor to present a 4-year finance plan for 4 years, and we are still waiting.
Well, they're going to get, did you vote for 1366, and is it incumbent upon the legislature to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot for you and the rest of us to consider in November?
I did vote for it, and I think it's up to the court on whether or not it's going to move forward. But I will tell you the people of Washington State have consistently said they want a 2/3 majority for new tax increases, and they're getting very frustrated about what about yes does not Olympia not understand.
So just to be clear, you voted in favor.
I did.
Is there any line of business that the state is in today that you've already identified as time to get out? Time to stop doing this?
No, but I bet we'll find a few, Austin.
And do you, I mean, you know that when budgets got cut during the recession, that lawsuits followed, and the state often finds itself with $80 million, $100 million judgments. The governor's ponying up more money for the Special Commitment Center now because he's facing a lawsuit there. Not really fun to spend money on sex offenders, but if you don't do it, you get sued.
That's right, and that's why you have the state has specific obligations that it must comply with, whether on environmental, mental health, supporting our most needy and those in our community who have special needs. That all has to be done. But we need to identify and step back and identify what are the key responsibilities of the state, and then put our resources behind those responsibilities.
Would you have spent more money then on human services in this budget, the 2015-17 budget?
I can't tell you whether I would have or not, because I did not have the opportunity to run around and talk to all of those chairmen. But I would have put together a budget